Paramhansa Yogananda indicated that he had been sent into the world at a time of extraordinary spiritual need on earth. Dynamically and with contagious joy, he set out to persuade minds steeped in the virtues of down-to-earth practicality that the most practical course of all is to seek God. Above all, he urged us to seek our inspiration inwardly in meditation. Americans, he said, were ready to learn meditation and God communion through the practice of the ancient science of yoga. Yogananda stated that Kriya is the supreme yoga science. I wasn't sent to the West, Yogananda often told his audiences, to dogmatize you with a new theology. I want to help you to attain actual experience of him through your daily practice of Kriya Yoga. He added, the time for knowing God has come.
Good evening, friends. Happy New Year and happy Master's birthday. Let's begin our evening together with a prayer. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and our beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. O Master, bless us with your presence this evening. Give us your love, that we may share it with all. Give us your wisdom, that we may find thee in every aspect of our lives. And give us your joy. We are your children. Bring us home to thee. Om. Peace. Amen. So this evening we wanted to share with you, we thought it might be a fun way to celebrate Yoganandaji's birthday by sharing about how we found Master, how we came to the path, how Yogananda has changed our lives, how we found the Autobiography of a Yogi. These are very interesting stories. So many of us from our Sangha here in LA and those serving at Ananda LA and Crystal Clarity have come together to share with you our journey. My name is Naya Swami Dharma Devi, for those who don't know me. And so I wanted to start by just sharing my story with you. I was about 20 years old and I discovered alternative healing and energy healing, and it was this whole beautiful world that had opened up to me. And I started on this naturopathic doctor program, and I was just gobbling it up, loving every minute of it. And I came to one of the courses that I had put off for as long as I could, which was a course on business. And it was not something that was very interesting to me at the time. And interestingly enough, in that course, now it was, mind you, a very spiritual school that I was attending, was a little book called Money Magnetism by Swami Kriyananda, except I didn't know it was Swami Kriyananda because on that book, it's his name is listed as J. Donald Walters. So knowing nothing about Ananda, about Yogananda, about Swamiji, and I have to say I was very turned off from the book when I looked at the cover and it was all these gold coins stacked up, and I said, gosh, this must be the most materialistic book I've ever seen. nonetheless, I read the book and I was just drawn in, and I read it many times. It was one of the few books that I kept in my bookshelf and would pull it out year after year and read it. And I had in my mind somehow that this guy, Swami Kriyananda, or J. Donald Walters, must be a Catholic priest, because that was all I knew growing up Catholic of spirituality. And so eventually I explored the back of the book, where it shows you some other titles by the same author. And yoga, hatha yoga, had been a part of my life for a number of years at that point. And I saw this book, The Art and Science of Raja Yoga, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. But my journey with yoga had been a little bit frustrated, because I knew there was something very deep and powerful with the practice, but I only did the physical aspect of the yoga. And then I would get to the end and I would say, there has to be something else. What else? And that was when I discovered this book. And there was a little part of me that went, oh God, please don't let it be just another physical yoga. I need whatever it is that's missing from my practice. And sure enough, that book brought me to the whole world of Ananda, and meeting really for that first time Swami Kriyananda. And I was then, of course, on this track, learning and reading and studying all these different books by Swamiji. And on Crystal Clarity's website, of course, very prominently was this book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. And I had at that point corresponded with a couple of people from Ananda, and they were very much telling me, you need to read this book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And I'm not much of a reader. I never have been, and the thought of reading an autobiography just kind of made me shudder. And but I was drawn to this beautiful figure, this beautiful face on the book. And so eventually I did get the book, and I started to read it. Now, usually you hear at Ananda, I got the book and I just read it and I just went all the way through it and I couldn't stop reading it. But for me, it was very different. It was very challenging to read the book, to read the autobiography. And I maybe got through the first 3 chapters when I had to put it down. But there was something in me that knew this was the truth. I just wasn't quite ready for it. The depth of the teachings and the power, the vibration that Master infused into that book was too much for me at the time. And so I got some other books. And if any of you have had trouble getting through the AY, I'll give you a little tip that really worked for me, and that was The Essence of Self-Realization. And that's another book that Swamiji compiled of Master's teachings, and it's just little snippets of his wisdom. And that book I just loved. And those little pieces of his wisdom, they just got into every cell in my body, to the point that I knew, this is my guru, this is my path, this is the truth. And for the first time in my life, I felt I had come home and I found my spiritual family. And so with deep gratitude, with deep love, I want to say thank you, Master. Thank you, Yogananda, for bringing this beauty to our world, to our lives. We are ever indebted, ever grateful to you. Happy birthday.
how is my life different with Master in it? It's different in every possible conceivable way. One example is the physical room that I'm sitting in. This used to be my son's bedroom, and I've turned it into a meditation room. It's dark and cave-like, and it only contains an altar. And on the altar are the 5 beautiful images of the great masters from this particular ray of light in the path of self-realization. And Master is prominent right there. And I spend a lot of time in this room now. I'm in here daily in prayer and in meditation and in beautiful intercommunion with these great souls. And if Master were standing in front of me, I would only want for him to know and to feel the depth of my devotion and my faith and my love of him and my gratitude for all that he gives me. I think the greatest difference with him in my life is that I understand now that everything comes through his grace. All of the lessons that I learn, all of the beauty, the love, the joy, the support, and all of the challenges that I receive are given to me through his grace as perfect opportunities for me to change and become more like him. And every aspect of my life is different. I'm a better friend. I'm a better servant. I can serve more from pure love and less from ego. And there's not a single part of my life that isn't different. And even though I know he's not standing right here in front of me right now, I do know the ever-presence of him in my life. And I try to live in that remembrance in every moment, that he knows everything about me and that he provides everything exactly as I need it. And so I guess the greatest difference in my life is that I'm happier. It's very difficult to be unhappy when I recognize that everything that I receive, whether it's joyful, loving, happiness, or challenges, comes through his grace because it's exactly what I need. So the biggest difference is that I'm happier and that I live in gratitude for all that I receive and just yearning that God knows my faith and my devotion and my love.
Hello, my name is Michael. I wanted to talk about today how, a lot of people talk about how they found this path, how they found Master. Instead, I would like to talk about how Master found me and brought me to the path. There was a friend of mine from several years ago, and at her place, I saw a book on her desk, and I asked her, "Who's that woman on the picture there?" And she said, "He is a yogi." And that answer did not register. A few weeks ago, I asked again, "Who's that woman?" She said, "He's a yogi." Again, it didn't really sink. And fast forward a few weeks, when she mentioned that she had a good meditation the night before, my curiosity was really piqued. And I kept asking her to teach me meditation, and she said, "I don't know how to teach you meditation." So finally, to make long story short, she gave me the phone number to the local self-realization fellowship center. And I called, I spoke with them, I went there for about an hour, we had a good interview, and I was given a book to read and take it from there, I was told. And that book happened to be the Autobiography of a Yogi, the exact book she had on her, my friend had on her desk, with the woman's picture. The yogi that I thought was a woman who ended up becoming my guru. Thank you, Master, for bringing me back to your path in this lifetime. Happy birthday.
Greetings, everyone. It is such a joy to be able to share my experience in finding Master in this lifetime. This was many, many years back. I found Master through what used to be called Paramhansa Yoga. Many of you know that place, which was run by Turiya. And so I still remember vividly that the first day I walked into that place, Turiya used to sit right underneath a large picture of Master, and I asked him, "Who is that?" And he said, "That's my guru." And then he was not offering, I was very interested in meditation, and that's why I found myself there. And he was not offering any meditation class at that point. So I continued to meet with him one-on-one. And I remember I used to just really torment him with questions like, how do you know he's your guru? And then how will I know who's my guru? And he would always patiently reply, Padma, when it's time, you will know. And then two things led to my understanding. The first one I remember was, so his meditation class came along. And that was at the end of that meditation class, when we chant that Om, Om, Om. And something happened. I don't know what happened. Something just stirred in my soul. And I just couldn't stop crying. I wasn't crying. Tears would run down my eyes, and I wasn't feeling sad at all. In fact, it was just a very strange experience that night, and I was embarrassed. I didn't know what was happening, and I tried to kind of quietly leave the class. The class was done anyways, but Turiya found me and he said, don't worry, I'll email you. It happens, and it's quite all right. And I think that was the point of no return. I knew this place is special. Whatever is going on here is special. And then I found myself with a health challenge. And so there I was lying down waiting for this procedure to happen. And they're going to anesthetize me. And I was scared. And that's when I closed my eyes, I clearly saw Master. And that picture of him with his hands like that blessing, and he was there. And I felt it's very difficult to describe, because I knew at that moment, I don't know how, but I knew he was my guru. And I was overjoyed, and then later found Turiya to let him know. And the journey began. So Master's blessing, it's difficult to put that into words. They say in the three worlds, the Guru's blessing is the greatest. And so we are all blessed to have found a true Guru, a Sadguru. And Master has given us the hope that yes, we can find God. Simple people like us can find God. And he urges us, and he's shown us the way. And I'll end with, I'll share this beautiful poem, this inspiring poem with all of you. When will he come? When every heart's desire pales before the brilliancy of the ever-leaping flames of God love, then he will come. When in expectation of his coming, you are ever ready to fearlessly, grieflessly, joyously burn the faggots of all desires in the fireplace of life, that you may protect him from your freezing inner indifference, then he will come. When no inclinations or unfulfilled cravings can be sure of your stability toward them, when he shall be certain you will never leave the Guru, then he will come. No matter how you feel, helpless, forsaken, tortured by temptation, karma, or tests, if you ever keep hoping he will come, he will come. When your mind says piercingly, you can't have him, you don't deserve having him, still, if your soul, disregarding all this, shall ever keep chanting within, he will come, he will come. When he shall be sure nothing else can claim you, then he will come. Even if you are the sinner of sinners, still, if you never stop calling him deeply in the temple of unceasing love, then he will come. Blessings, everyone, on this joyous day. Om Guru.
When asked how Paramhansa Yogananda has impacted my life, what always springs, among other things, to my mind, to my heart, is his almost incomprehensible capacity to love and inexhaustible compassion, seemingly infinite. And I recall years ago, when I knew very little about Yogananda or Ananda or anything like that, but I was visiting, I had some relatives visiting, family from out of town, and we went to the lake shrine, and they have a little museum there and boutique, and I saw the old black and white photographs that were shown, and I had never hardly seen, and honestly, such a saintly being in the photographs. It's like everything else kind of dissolved around, and I was just transported really by the glowing kindness and love that just emanated from this being. It was, in a sense, difficult to tell if a man, a woman, or both, but now I understand the Divine Mother's love shining through. And then later at Ananda village, and seeing Swami Kriyananda when he visited, and that same joy and love, and then countless souls as well, one after the other, at the village that I met, and various Guru Bhais, disciples, and perhaps what I call to or I lean to the most, that has helped me the most over the years when things are challenging, and we've certainly been experiencing this past challenging year, but that capacity that he exhibit, and so many of the deep souls I've met, the graciousness, the kindness, the warmth, the strength, the honesty, the calmness, which I aspire to, but the deep love. It's the love, and it's that unconditional love, like the sun that shines, that regardless of which creatures on earth are in proximity of the sun or not, nevertheless, that sunlight of love is shining. That's what I feel. That's what I draw to. That's when I hear the recordings of his voice. And so grateful to be honoring Yogananda Ji's birthday this evening, this day. Joy to you.
If the Western brothers only could learn the methods of the yogis, then they would learn to live 100 years in perfect health, happiness, and great success. You people do not sleep correctly and allow your sleep to be disturbed by the mental movies of dreams. But by closing the eyes and in a relaxation, I can remain asleep several nights. And by opening the eyes and recharging the body, I can keep awake several days. Now I will go into the state of superconscious bliss by lifting my eyes higher in a relaxation and controlling my heartbeat.
Hi everyone, blessings. My name is Preeta, and I would love to share the story of how I came to know Master and his teachings. So I was always a very inquisitive soul, and I had the privilege of having a mother who allowed me to explore my spirituality and explore different paths without any judgment, just her really allowing me to find my way with spirituality. And I joined a Christian church when I was 18. It was just right across the street from where I lived. And I remember asking the group of women that I would attend Bible study with, what it meant to talk to God or what it looked like. I asked them, basically, I want to have this conversation with God, but what is that like? I wanted the direct experience of God, and I wanted inner communion with God, but I wasn't finding the answer necessarily through that path. And I think it was, through that exploration and through God's grace, there was just all of these little steps along the way that eventually brought me to Master. But maybe about a year after that, I had a friend, when I had just started to dip my toes into yoga, who said, you have to go to Self-Realization Fellowship. And we went to SRF in Encinitas, where there's Swami's Beach and the beautiful gardens overlooking the ocean. And I remember that experience that day being the first time that I felt this tangible peace in my body. I had no idea what the chakras were, but intuitively when I sat down to meditate, not knowing what or how to do that either, I intuitively started to move through the chakras. And when I got to my heart, I just felt this warmth, this peace, and this love that felt very real on a physical level. And that was a turning point in my life for, I think, the search for God got even more, it became even more urgent because I had experienced it and it was like, I want more. How do I get that? And for some reason, my 19-year-old brain didn't make the connection between where I was that moment, Yogananda and his grace in that moment, and that experience. And it wasn't until I was, almost 10 years later, where I hit a point in the road where I said, I need a spiritual path. I need devotion to one spiritual path, that I really tuned in and I asked, where is that? Who is that? And I instantly, upon asking that question, remembered Master's face in the bookstore of SRF. I remember after the garden, I had explored the bookstore, and I remember that I had seen his photo outside of Ananda in Larchmont, which is one of the locations we used to have in LA, and I just knew I have to go there. And ever since, I've been a part of the Ananda community, and it's felt like home, and I really feel Master's presence in each one of our community members, our Guru Bhais here. So I want to thank you all for that, and thank you in joining us for celebrating Master's birthday.
Hello friends, my name is Anup, and I'll be sharing a little bit of how I found my path, Master, and his impact on my life. How I found Master was not very dramatic, in the sense my parents were already on the path, and with references to Yogananda happening in our home, I happened to be drawn to the book, The Autobiography of the Yogi. And while reading it, the memory of my childhood came back, that I remembered, I read this about 20, 30 years ago. And I was like, wow. And the stories were really fascinating. Tiger Swami, the perfume saint, saint with two bodies, resurrection of Yukteswar, Kriya Yoga. It got me to thinking that I want to know more. And I remember the day I thought that was the first How to Meditate class that was happening not too far away, and I happened to attend, and I remember upon entering the class, the first thought, I am home. And ever since then, it's been a beautiful journey. One of the impacts, I could say, is almost a funny one, and now when I think of it, not back then. I had a bit of an attitude problem when I used to drive. And as I was on the path, and every single day I was a new person, like I had shed a shell, a skin of something. Master was really helping me. And I became more calmer, or at least that's what people around me started feeling. And I remember this once, I was on the road, and this other person, while driving, they actually clipped sort of with their side view mirror, and they just kept driving on. And I was like really annoyed. How could this person not see? And I actually chased after them. And when I actually caught up with them, and they had no idea what they'd done, I knocked on the mirror, and they sort of like slid the mirror down and asked yes. And I looked at the person, and then suddenly I could see Master smiling back at me. It's like, are you fully healed? Kind of a thing. And I actually started laughing. And for some strange reason, that person smiled. I mean, he didn't know why I was laughing. And I just carried on. And I realized, that was his way of showing, once I had sort of learned, and also helping take away a karma and things like that. And my life's been a beautiful set between me and him, a beautiful set of anecdotes. And there are many more, but I hope this is a story that inspires everyone. Thank you, Master. Happy birthday.
Dear friends, we will have now just a few minutes of a guided meditation. And so let's just try to relax our bodies and just find a comfortable sitting position. And then we can just take a deep breath in and tense all our body. Hold the breath and the tension, and then you can relax and exhale. And let's do it another time. Inhale and tense. You can vibrate, and then exhale and relax. And the last time, as you inhale, feel this energy, light, infinite power flowing through you, and then exhaling, just let go any separation from this infinite source, this infinite light and you. And now just for a few cycles, we can just practice the triangular breath, pranayama, and I will guide you. So we can start inhaling now. Hold the breath and exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And we want to dedicate these minutes to our Master, our Guru, this connection with His love. And so I will guide you, and you can just listen to these few words from the Autobiography describing the meeting between the Guru and the disciple, and just the story of the meeting between Master and Swami Sri Yukteswar, and the moment of the meeting or remembering of Lahiri Mahashaya and Babaji. And just try to awaken in your heart, as you are the disciple, the same deep vibration, the same powerful love, that you can listen from these words. A few eager steps, and I was at his feet. Guru Deva, the divine face, was none other than he of my 1,000 visions. These Alshan eyes, in leonine head, with pointed beard and flowing locks, had oft peered through gloom of my nocturnal reveries, holding a promise I had not fully understood. O my own, you have come to me. My Guru uttered the words again and again in Bengali. O my own, you have come to me. His voice tremulous with joy. How many years I have waited for you. O my own, you have come to me. And then we are in the forest of the Himalayas, and Babaji is calling Lahiri and helping Lahiri to remember. Lahiri, surely this cave seems familiar to you. As I maintained a bewildered silence, the saint approached and struck me gently on the forehead. At his magnetic touch, a wondrous current swept through my brain, releasing the sweet seed memories of my previous life. I remembered my voice was half choked with joyous sobs. You are my Guru Babaji, who has belonged to me always. Scenes of the past arise vividly in my mind. Here in this cave, I spent many years of my last incarnation. As ineffable recollections overwhelmed me, I tearfully embraced my master's feet. For more than 3 decades, I have waited for you here, waited for you to return to me. Babaji's voice rang with celestial love. You slipped away and vanished into the tumultuous waves of the life beyond death. The magic wand of your karma touched you, and you were gone. Though you lost sight of me, never did I lose sight of you. I pursued you over the luminescent astral sea, where the glorious angels sail. Through gloom, storm, upheaval, and light, I followed you, like a mother bird guarding her young. As you lived out your human term of womb life and emerged a babe, my eyes was ever on you. When you cover your tiny form in the lotus posture under the nadia sense in your childhood, I was invisibly present, patiently, month after month, year after year. I have watched over you, waiting for this perfect day. Now you are with me. Lo, here is your cave, loved of yore. I have kept it ever clean and ready for you. Here is your hallowed asana blanket, where you daily sat to fill your expanding heart with God. Behold there your bowl, from which you often drank the nectar prepared by me. See how I have kept the brass cup brightly polished, that you might drink again therefrom. My own, do you now understand? My Guru, what can I say? I murmured brokenly. Where has one ever heard of such deathless love? I gazed long and ecstatically on my eternal treasure, my Guru in life and death. And just keep your gaze on this eternal treasure of yours, your Guru in life and death. And let his love enter your heart. Open completely to receive his ray, his grace. fully His presence, and be blessed. Become one with His light, with His love. And try with all your heart, your being, your energy to call to Master. And offer yourself completely at His feet. And allow this vibration of love purify your heart, helping you remember this eternal promise of love, of divine friendship. Your eternal friend, lover and beloved, ever present, ever with you. And just offer in your heart the gratitude for this gift in your life. And we can ask to be blessed by the grace to share His presence with everyone, His love, His joy and wisdom. Om Shanti. Peace. Amen.
There have been many gurus who came here, and I've studied all their lives, but only very few, 3 really, had huge, massive global impact. And Yogananda was one of them, and probably one could argue the most influential. So from 1920 till his passing in 1952, he was the guru of America. The LA Times called him the first superstar guru of the 20th century. And then the autobiography succeeded him and kept him as a real presence ever since 1946, well, ever since his passing in 1952. And so in the late 60s and 70s, when there was this explosion of interest in Indian spirituality and yoga and meditation, that book was a door opener for millions and millions of people. There's only one autobiography of a yogi. There's a lot of spiritual memoirs now, but it stands out and it will stand the test of time.
Hello, friends. Happy Master's birthday. And Dharma Devi asked me to share on the topic of how Yogananda and how the autobiography of a yogi touched my life. And I know each and every one of us has been transformed by Yogananda and by the autobiography in some fashion. And I was reminded of a deeply inspiring quote that I wanted to share from the autobiography. It's from Swami Sri Yukteswar. Ordinary love is selfish, darkly rooted in desires and satisfactions. Divine love is without condition, without boundary, without change. The flux of the human heart is gone forever at the transfixing touch of pure love. That, for me, really encapsulates my experience with the autobiography of a yogi. My life was deeply rooted in desires and material satisfactions before the grace of God opened up the autobiography to me. I don't know if you recall that story of the saint in India. There was a young man that came to him and said, "Will you be my guru?" And the saint took him down to the river and held his head under the water for a minute, and the young man was flailing, and then he finally pulled him up and said, "What did you want?" "Air." And the guru said, "Well, come back when you want God that much." Well, I felt like I was that young man flailing in the world, and I got to the point, I would say, of utter desperation. And there is a true value in utter desperation, what the world's going through right now. When we get to that point, we make a genuine soul call. And so that's what I did. I found myself working in New York City in a fast-paced environment, very stressful. And I remember being on a sales trip in the Midwest, and I found myself in a used bookstore in the Milwaukee airport, of all places. And I just walked up to the metaphysical section, and without knowing anything about yoga or the spiritual eye, I remember looking up and saying mentally, "You must send me a good book now." And the next book I pulled off the shelf was none other than Autobiography of a Yogi. And I felt like when I saw Master's picture, it was like this quote, it was the transfixing touch of pure love, that I was all over the place. But just seeing him, like that song, "O Holy Night," when he appeared, the soul felt its worth. For that moment, it was as if he was a reflection of my higher potential. And I knew that I had found my home in God through my guru, through Yogananda. And it was that experience and that one touch of pure love through that photograph that really has been the trail of inspiration that I've continued to follow up until this moment in time. And I think now for all of us, what the world is going through is this point of utter desperation. And when we need help, like Swami Kriyananda said in one of his songs, "When we need you, Lord, you descend." We have to remember that we have sent out this soul call that has drawn this great masters, this great line of gurus to this planet at this time. And Just like Swami Sri Teshwar said to Yogananda when he came to him, when Yogananda found him in that narrow lane in Varanasi, he said, "Oh, my own, you have come to me." That is what the Master is saying to us now, tremulous with joy. "Oh, my own, you have come to me." Let us come unto him and let us melt in that transfixing touch of pure love. Thank you, Master, for incarnating. Thank you for showing us the way to self-realization. With all our hearts, with all our minds, we lay our lives at your feet.
Hello, friends. It's a joy to be able to share this moment from my life with you all. I was 15 years old. I was 15 years old, was a sophomore in high school. I was taking a class on world politics and world history. And we had to do a project in that class. And for some long forgotten reason, I was choosing India as the country that I was going to do my project for. I was fortunate to have access to a college library in the area. My father taught at the local school. It's Indiana Wesleyan University now, and so I was able to go to their library and research for this project. And it was in a time period when they used the Dewey Decimal System, so all the books on India were all gathered together and shelf after shelf of them. So I was back in the stacks scanning the spines, the titles for whatever my specific subject was about India. And I came across the spine of this book that looked most interesting. It seems as though the picture of Master was right on the spine. I have that in my memory, but I've not been able to find that on books. And here he had this long hair, and it just struck me, this kind of not wild, but very unconventional appearance. And I knew it was a man. Some people sometimes think Yogananda was a woman, but I knew it was a man. But I was very drawn and fascinated to it. So I added that to the pile of books in my arm and went on back to the tables in the study area of the library. And I was much more interested in that book than all the other ones I had to read for the project. So I started reading it, and I think spent the rest of the evening reading that one book. And it was just amazing to me. At that time, I was a very committed fundamentalist Christian who was very active in the church and in my youth group and in Youth for Christ in my high school. And I couldn't believe the things that were in the autobiography of a yogi and accept them, but my, was I ever fascinated by them. So I don't remember how much of the book I read. I didn't read it all the way through at that one setting, but I did look at all the pictures, and over the years after I read it, one of the things that stuck in my mind was the photo of Rajarsi Janakananda sitting there bare-chested on the lawn at Mount Washington. And I just thought, wow, there's an American who's really completely embraced these teachings and who's just given his life over to following this man, this incredible person who claims to have had all these experiences. Well, after that time, I was more open to things about India and things about Hinduism and that Eastern spirituality. In college, I did projects on India too, but I never did go back and finish the autobiography of a yogi. Well, in 1974, so this is 17 years later, in fact, it was almost at the exact time of year in the fall, 17 years later, Sita and I were in India for our first time to ever visit there. And somewhere along our journeys, someone gave Sita a copy of the autobiography of Yogi. Sita is my wife. And so we were making a journey between meditation courses. We had just finished a course in Benares and Varanasi, and we were on our way to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha had his enlightenment experience. In both of those places, we were taking this meditation course. And so all the way between Varanasi and Bodh Gaya, and then from Bodh Gaya we went on to Delhi, and so on that leg of the journey as well, she was all fascinated and wrapped up in the autobiography of Yogi, and I was kind of like, well, I've already read that. I know all about that. But she kept telling me these things that I didn't know about from the book, and of course it had been a very long time, and so I got reintroduced to the autobiography of a yogi then. And in those years we were living in Japan, so we went back there, and then we had through a natural cataclysm, had a big shift in our lives, and we decided we were going to need to take about a year off, and we decided that we would take that year and visit spiritual communities around the United States. And so we were investigating and looking at the different communities in the Spiritual Community Guide, and lo and behold, there was a community that was founded on the teachings of this Paramhansa Yogananda, and of course it was Ananda, and so we came.
Hi, my name is Kala Molly, and I just wanted to share the story with you of how I came to find this best-selling spiritual classic, Autobiography of a Yogi. And one of the things that kind of gives context to how it came to me and at what point in my life was I was living in Boston and had been attending graduate school for public health, and it was a very competitive program. Our curriculum was really exciting but also really challenging, and I started to get really caught up in the stress and anxiety and worrying about what kind of job I would be able to get after school, how I could get the best grades and stay top of my class, and these sorts of things. And I came home over winter break, and I was basically a little bit of a mess. And because of that, my father reached into his collection of books and pulled out Autobiography of a Yogi. And so I took that book home with me to my little dorm room at the top of one of those brownstone buildings. I was on the 4th floor, and I had this little bed in this tiny little room with a tiny little window. And every morning and evening, I would lay out a yoga mat and I would practice yoga, because what happened was, as I began to read that book, my whole consciousness began to change. And it wasn't soon after I began reading that I also began to meditate. And prior to that, I had a typical story like many people where I was on that search. I had really been trying to become a more positive, happy person, and I was going into bookstores, and previous to being given Autobiography of a Yogi, the Bhagavad Gita came to me. And I just remember thinking, these teachings have so much truth. And then when I opened AY, Autobiography of a Yogi, I noticed that in some of the footnotes and in some of the chapters, there was this immense amount of science being brought into the picture. And I also noticed that there were teachings of Jesus Christ explained in ways that I had never before understood. And it started to connect me in a way to spirit, to the universe, to cosmic creation in such a way that I'd never imagined. But it felt so at home. I felt so at home with the teachings. And there was talk amongst myself and friends about, completing a yoga retreat after our graduate school was done as a way to celebrate all the hard work and a transition. And not only had that come up, but also the idea of, applying for jobs and trying to get something going after school. But nothing had come of it. I applied to job after job after job, and nothing came. But what I realized was that it was to keep space open for me for when I went searching for yoga retreats and found a Karma Yoga Ashram program in Nevada City, which on the front page of its website had a picture of Paramhansa Yogananda. It's the Expanding Light Retreat of Ananda Village, which is a community dedicated to Paramhansa Yogananda. And that changed my life forever, because to see his teachings that I read in the book come alive, it was a dream come true. And so that book has forever inspired me to live a life full of meaning and purpose and understanding. So thank you to Yogananda for giving this opportunity to all of us truth seekers everywhere.
So I guess my path to master started when I took a summer in Syria outside of Damascus at a monastery. And in that desert silence, I found Christ in my heart. And I don't know why. I was a-religious up till then, but I knew it was Christ. And I think that started the ball rolling. And 3 years later, I was doing yoga in New York, and in the gift shop, Master's face looked at me. Like, it was a little mischievous, like, you want to do this for real now? And I looked at the face, and at first I dismissed it. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, just go with the face. But then the face kept on looking at me every time I went to yoga there. So then I had to buy the book, and that was kind of it. And I've been all in since then. So thanks, Master, and happy birthday.
Hi, friends. So I'll tell you a little bit about how the Autobiography of a Yogi changed my life. And I must go back to a place where I was spiritually, which was a place of confusion and sorrow. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what all of these feelings were. I just knew I wanted something different. I wanted joy. And so before I found Yogananda, I was on a journey of discovering spirituality, what it meant. So I actually was reading a lot of different books and watching documentaries and learning all sorts of techniques, trying to improve my level of joy and happiness. But I didn't have any discipline, really. I had the desire for discipline, but I couldn't really get myself to do anything with a certain level of continuity and being constant. So, I learned this technique. I would practice it for a little while, and that one, and I would practice that, and I'd read about this and read about that, and look at this movie about spirituality, and then that documentary. And I just accumulated this knowledge, this spiritual knowledge that really took me in a downward spiral, because here I was knowing more about spirituality, or so I thought, but actually the fact that I wasn't feeling any better just made it even worse. And so through the grace of God, I found the Autobiography of a Yogi. My mother was reading it, she was devouring it, and after she finished, I also just sunk right in it, just read day after day, just kept going and in, and it was really by the grace of God that something clicked inside me. I couldn't even understand what it was. I understand it now looking backwards, but then it was just something that moved inside me that made me understand that, okay, I need to meditate, and I need to meditate with discipline. So I need to have a discipline, a constant, a daily practice of meditation. And at the same time, I knew I need to have Kriya Yoga. And so this kind of two big pieces of understanding just snapped into my soul, and it was like an awakening that it was not intellectual. It was not something that I thought about or that I processed something. It was just a spark that lit my soul. And from that day on, my whole life changed in the sense that it changed direction. So instead of going into that downward spiral towards ever greater sorrow and confusion, I started going in a direction of ever greater clarity and joy. And so it's not that after reading it, my life went from black to white, but from walking south to walking north. And of course, it was not just reading it and receiving that grace, but doing something with it. So I received that understanding, received that grace, and then took steps on the direction that it was pointing me to. So I learned to meditate. I learned the techniques of Yogananda, the Hangsa, energization, and then gradually built up to learn Kriya. And it's a journey that ends in endlessness, as Yogananda says. So it doesn't matter so much where we're in today and we will be tomorrow, or where we were yesterday, but rather what's the direction that we're moving in. And so if we're moving ever into God's consciousness, into God's joy, that's what mattered. And so that's what I want to share with you, that I wish that this new year you can walk in a direction of ever greater wisdom and ever greater joy and love and peace. And may God's consciousness and Yogananda's consciousness permeate your soul and your whole being. Namaste.